because there's very important content here. Next on the stage, we're going to have Sergio Aguilar talking about payments. So let's give a round of applause for Sergio.
Thanks, man. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Jaime was saying, this is going to be kind of a tough session because you are all coming back from lunch, but we're going to try to keep it fun and entertaining and just trying to explain you what we're doing from the faster payments scenario, right? So I know that payments is a large topic, but we're going to try to focus on the faster payments piece. And well, first of all, I want to thank you all for showing up, but also I'm very excited and nervous at the same time because I normally don't talk to other developers that is not my team. So this is somewhat challenging because I have a lot of respect for what developers do and how you guys transform the industry and how you're helping us move forward. So let's go through these. Well, that's my name, and if you have any questions after the fact, that's my email as well. So sometimes I take a little longer to answer, but I'll try to get to it if you send me an email. So I'm responsible for the delivery of Zelle, RTP, and FedNow. And today we're going to talk about FedNow and RTP mainly. In the case of Zelle, it's a thing of its own, but we want to focus on the API experience that we have for RTP and FedNow. So you will see it here that on the context, I kept it like that. This section, keep it short here, another section and placeholder. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that this is more of a conversation with you all. That if you have questions, there is something that is not clear or doesn't make sense, you can just jump in and we can have a conversation about that. And if we cannot cover it while I'm on stage, we can talk about it later. So the instant payment networks. So in today's world, what we have in the US market is two main offers for this. We have RTP from the clearinghouse, and we have the FedNow service from the Fed. And they are very similar on how they work. They offer a very similar service. They operate in a very similar way. So what I would say is that they are siblings, right? They are not identical twins. They have some differences on how they operate, but for the most part, they are the same. So any of you already have RTP or FedNow? Some of you, all right? And so I'm going to go through a couple of slides where we talk about how the networks work. And the way that I learn, and that's how I try to explain things, is by looking at pictures. So I do a lot of diagramming with my teams to help me understand what I'm saying and making sure that I'm making sense. So I'm going to use one of those diagrams here to talk about how these networks operate. So whenever we are talking about a transaction that is being processed on the credit transfer side, so whenever we are sending a transaction on either FedNow or RTP, this is kind of the flow that it follows, right? So there is a sender of a transaction that could be a financial institution or could be a third-party service provider that is being sponsored, or it's being the provider for that specific financial institution. They trigger that transaction. It gets to the instant payment network, either RTP or FedNow, and then that instant payment network sends it. In this case, we have a third-party service provider in Jack Henry, and we do an account validation. With that account validation, we provide a response back to the network saying, this looks good. We know that account is open and ready to receive funds. And with that, the instant payment network does a couple of things. One, it settles the payment, so the settlement is happening in real time. And two, it sends a message to both the sender of the credit transfer and the receiver saying, this transaction has been settled. This cycle normally takes about 20 seconds. So that's what we are seeing in today's world. And this is the flow that we use most of the time, right? So whenever we are receiving transactions, which was the first use case that we put together, this is what happens. It's just that we are sitting normally on this side, right? So whenever it's one of our financial institutions that is receiving transactions, let's say that on this side we have Chase, and on this side we have one of our financial institutions, we are seeing this flow coming in our way, and we are processing everything for the financial institution. So this is very straightforward on how the credit transfer works and it's what you will hear from the network saying, when they say PAX 008, this is what they are referring to. The messages that are going back and forth, and then the settlement messages are the PAX 002s. So whenever we are talking about those messages, that's what they are referring to. And so this is the credit transfer at a high level, and we're going to look at the request for payment at a high level as well. So in this case, in a very similar scenario, somebody sends a request for payment, the network takes care of saying, well, this request for payment is coming from this provider. Let me check who is supporting this routing number that the request for payment is going to. Based off that, that's how they make that decision of, okay, let me send it to whomever is supporting that. That could be a direct connection, or it could be through a service provider like us, and then we take care of processing that. There is a lot of processing on this, right? So we have to check on the structure of the message. We have to check the status of the account. We have to make some validations internally, and then with that, we provide a response back to the network saying, we got it. We got this request for payment, and now it's the time to present it to the receiver of the request for payment, and with that, then the receiver of the request for payment can say, well, I'm going to accept it, and then either you can pay it or you can stay that way, which is one of the challenging things that we have with the networks. There is not a expiration of the request for payments. So this is the other flow that we work with. So why does all of this make sense? I wanted to make sure that we had some context about the processing of these transactions and what we have done from our side to make sure that you as an integrator have an easy way to get to these without going through the pain of dealing with the messages, right? Because these are very chatty networks, right? So besides that, we have to do a ton of other things that are related to are you alive? Is your system up and running? Are you able to push this transaction and all of those things, right? So we take care of all that stuff, and I have a slide that kind of shows what we are doing for you on that front. So where do we fit within this? We take care of this part. Everything that is related to, are you on the network? Are you alive? Is it working? Can you answer my messages? Is it up 24/7? That's where we are taking care of all of that stuff. Processing the messages, structuring the messages that the network requires, keeping it compliant with what the clearinghouse wants from us, what the Fed wants from us, making sure that we are certified for all of those messages. We take care of that. If they make a change on how the standard is being used by the network, like let's say in the case of the clearinghouse, for example, they are moving to a new version of the standard, we take care of making sure that the messages are valid, that we do the certification for the cores. We make sure that our calls to the cores are working, and that you as an integrator don't have to worry about that. So where do you land on this space? Well, right here, right? So we built an API that basically abstracts all of that complexity and puts it behind a very simple contract where you don't have to think about a PAX 08 or a PAX 02 or a CAMP 56 or a CAMP 29. You don't have to care about that. We just created an API that abstracts all of those things and allows you to just make a simple call, and with that, we take care of processing the transaction. So we get it from you, and we take it to the core, we validate, and then we provide back an answer and send it over to the network. How does that work on our APIs? It's first very, very simple. So we took the whole thing of the XMLs that you have to deal with the network, and we abstracted all of that for you. So whenever you're making a call to our APIs and you're trying to execute a credit transfer, you just have to tell us, I am trying to send, let's say, $100 from this account and this routing number to this account and this routing number, and we also provide you some fields to provide the description for the transaction. And that is it. You don't have to structure an XML or anything like that. And we added a couple of other features. So for example, you can also pass us your transaction ID, so you can keep that. And whenever you're trying to reprocess a transaction, we can take that through our API and say, you have sent us this transaction before. Are you really sure that you want to process this? We will automatically reject it so that you don't have to deal with double postings for reprocessing a transaction. So we have done a lot of work to make sure that the APIs are not only easy to use, but very simple to adopt. The whole concept when we put together the APIs was we want to make sure that the APIs are developer-friendly. The only way to get these things off the ground is if the developers are able to look at the documentation of the API and it makes sense from the get-go. We also wanted to make sure that the API was super, super fast. So the way that we did that was we know the whole trip takes around 20 seconds. And we knew that our API callers wouldn't want to stay hanging on that connection for 20 seconds. So what we are doing is we are receiving an API call. We are making a basic set of validations at the account level with the core. And with that, we also treat all of these transactions as if they were cash, so we take the money out. And as soon as we do that, we provide a response to the API. On average, it's taking under 1 second for us to process those transactions. And then we provide a response back on the API saying, your credit transfer is on flight. Now, how would you know that we are done with that transaction? Because we still have to send it over to the network still has to process it. The receiving FI has to take care of that transaction, and with that, we'll get that final message. We are providing those updates through events. So we are creating events that are going directly to you as a consumer of the event so you can get a final status on those transactions. We did that for 2 reasons. One was we wanted to make sure that the call to the API was fast and you will be able to get an instant response, but also because the events that we are producing are not anemic events. The events that we're producing carry all the information that is associated with the transaction, so that you don't have to call us again. So basically what we are doing is we're saying, your transaction is done, and here's all the information that is associated with that transaction. This is the status, this is the network that you send it through, this is your original message ID, this is the message ID that we sent to the network, this is the transaction ID that we created for you. So all of that information is contained within that event, and the purpose of that is so you don't have to call us again. And that will allow you to also build your own reporting on your side without asking us, can you do an ETL for me? We want you to have that data on the go so that in real time you can feed your own databases, your own reports if you want to, right? So you can use these not only for the purpose of saying, well, I have my transaction and I know what's the latest status on it, but also that if you want to build some data intelligence from the events that we are producing, you can do that in real time. So that was the idea behind it. Now, what are the services that we are providing today? Well, this is, first, it implements an OAuth 2.0 workflow, so all of us here are familiar with that flow, but then we have all of these services that are being currently provided by the API, and we will talk a little bit about what are the extra services or new things that we are putting on the API as well. So we have the send payment. It's just a post call to the credit transfers endpoint. Like I said, it's very easy. You just provide us the data on who you're sending it to, from which account, and then we make the validations and provide your response back, and then we will give you an event for that transaction. We have the request for payment as well. So the request for payment works in a very, very similar way. You're just telling us, I am requesting this much money from this account for this amount. And you also tell us, when I get a response, I want it on this account. So that's also a very simple JSON contract as well. You're also able to respond to our request for payment. So we are producing events for all of the requests for payments that come our way, that are going to your institutions or your fintechs. We also produce an event where we're just saying, here you go, there is a request for payment for you. Do you want to pay it? Call the request for payment endpoint. So that's the whole purpose of those. We know that in very specific scenarios, there are requests for return of funds. So we have been running the RTP program for about 5 years and the FedNow program since July last year. And through that, we have seen some requests for return of funds coming our way. And what we know is that we have to provide a way for you to automate this. So there are 2 ways that you can do this. One is you can do it through the PayCenter portal, or you can be listening for a request for return of funds, and you will get an event that will tell you, hey, there's a request for return of funds. What do you want to do with it? In some scenarios, You will take it to your own teams, your own queues to process them and make sure that they are doing the validation, maybe calling your customer and saying, hey, we got a request for return of funds for this transaction, and what do you want to do with it? Do you want to accept it? Do you want to pay it? Do you want to reject it? What is the status of that? We also offer an endpoint for getting payments. So we don't want you to be calling us, but if you have to, let's say that you had a crash in your system and you lost some of the events and you have to make a call to check on what's the status of one of the payments, you can call the get payment endpoint. So that will give you access to the transactions that you've executed against the API. So fairly straightforward, very, very simple on how to get information about the payments that we have executed. Then we also offer an endpoint that is related to financial institutions. So why is this one important? This will tell you what are the financial institutions that are on the network. It will list all of the financial institutions if you just call the get endpoint. It will list a specific financial institution by ID or by participant number or by routing number. And whenever you are making a call to this endpoint, it will tell you, well, that routing number is on the network, and it is on the network with the following services. So it will tell you if that routing number is enabled for send, for receive, for request for payment. So it will tell you not only that the routing number is on the network, but the services that are being supported by that routing number. Where that helps a lot is, for example, if you are enabling an experience that will send requests for payment. You can check on that endpoint and just say, well, let me check if the receiver side of this request for payment is enabled to reply back to my request for payment. Because if they are not enabled, what's the purpose of sending that request for payment? It's just going to come to our API and we're going to reject it immediately because we do similar checks on our side to make sure that the transaction that you're sending us, it's valid and it works. So, a couple of things, and why should you come to us instead of building this on your own? So this is everything that is handled, and this is what we cover. So everything that is grayed out are things that we do for you. So you don't have to handle, wait, it's going on automatic. Can I go back? Yes. So this is everything that is in gray is what we are handling for you. You don't have to deal with the 24/7, 365 responses. You don't have to deal with the network maintenance, certifications, connections, everything that is around that, we take care of it. So it simplifies the effort of going live on the networks and being able to use them. I know that we have, well, like coding to the ISO 20022 messages, we take care of that. We do the analysis with the technical teams from the Fed. We do the analysis with the technical teams from the clearinghouse on what are the changes that they are proposing. We have brought changes to their teams on how we want them to modify the standard. Just recently, we had a call with the clearinghouse about they want to add some fraud information on the Paxway message, and we were having a conversation about the different changes that they can put on the XML so that we can use those fields properly within the ISO standard. So truly, the work that lies on the FI is the agreements, because that's something that we can't do for you. It has to come from the financial institution. Review the reconciliation reports. So we provide reconciliation reports, but we need your teams to be able to review them. We are working on a reconciliation system that allows for the financial institution just to look at the transactions that fail. So we want to make sure that whenever your operations teams have questions are about transactions that had issues when we were processing and not about transactions that were successful. Most of the transactions that we process are successful. And when I say most, is we have programs, or we are looking at our RTP program, for example, 0.02% of the transactions fail. So that's how accurate the networks are, and that gives you an idea on whenever I'm processing these transactions, what is the kind of operational burden that I'm going to add to the operational teams from development, right? So when I'm working on sending transactions like this, and I'm working on an application that is going to be sending transactions in real time, what's the burden that is going to be created for the operational side? It's required from the networks, there is a requirement that there are OFAC checks, because in today's world, we do not do a no-fact check in real time. That will take a lot of time from the transaction perspective, and it's something that we don't execute. So there's a couple of notes that I made here that I want to make sure that we cover. So why did we do all of this? We wanted to make sure that through the experience that we are providing on the APIs, you can compete with the tier 1 financial institutions. What we saw from our experience on the receive side is that most of the transactions are already coming from fintechs. So we see transactions that are coming from Venmo, from PayPal, from Square, from Coinbase, from Bill.com. And what we wanted to make sure was, well, first, we knew that the account-to-account transfers that are coming from FI to FI or me-to-me transactions are common, but not as common as the use cases that are already on the market, and those use cases are being pushed by fintechs. So we wanted to make sure that the experience that we are offering through our APIs allow for our FIs to be able to sponsor fintechs into this environment so that they can execute those transactions without going around the FI. We want to make sure that the fintechs are part of your ecosystem and that we are able to support them. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is by providing an API that is really, really easy to use. The other thing that I wanted to make sure that we talk about is what is coming next for our API. So when we built our API, we got certified for Send back in 2021. So we've been certified for Send for a long while. And our API was ready by the end of 2021 because first we had to certify the messages on the network, and then we had to move forward with the API. Then when we launched our FedNow program, with Send capabilities from the get-go, and it also had an API enable for FedNow. So because of how aggressive we were with our FedNow program, we got the Scimitar core live on day 1 for FedNow. Same thing with Silver Lake, and now like 3 months after we were live with all of our cores. But we ended up with 2 endpoints, one for RTP and one for FedNow. And that, from a developer experience, it's the worst because you have to deal with 2 different places when you are trying to execute a transaction. So we are already fixing that, and we have just deployed our consolidated endpoint for both faster payment networks. The idea behind that is that you, as an integrator, you don't care what's the rail that is going to be used for executing the transaction. That is a decision that lies on the financial institution. So the financial institution has to have the freedom to say, my preferred rail for Send is RTP, or my preferred rail for Send is FedNow, if I am a sender on both networks. So that is at the institution level, it is not at the integrator level. So we want the developers to just focus on, I want to send a transaction, and it is up to PayCenter to deal with the configuration. Based on what the FI has told us, we route that call, but you as a developer don't have to care about where is this going to land, because at the end of the day, you're just looking for a rail to deliver that transaction. What we will make sure is that the transaction is delivered, that you get an event that tells you this transaction was delivered this way through this rail, so that whenever you are consuming that data from the financial institution perspective, or you as a fintech, you are able to tell, okay, so I send these many transactions this way. And they landed through this channel. But from the execution perspective, that should be transparent. Now, I've heard the term intelligent routing for this. I don't call that intelligent routing. That for us is just a rail finder. So what we are saying is, we're getting a transaction, you are live on both networks, and we are sending it to someone. And that someone is live only on FedNow. Well, why would we try to send it over RTP even though RTP might be your preferred rail? That doesn't make sense. Let's just send it over FedNow. Now, the receiver is live on both networks, and you are live on both networks. Well, we just check what's the configuration for your preferred rail, and that's what we are calling just a rail finder. So we are already on, like I said, we already deployed a consolidated endpoint to make sure that when you are making that call, you're just saying, I want to execute a credit transfer with these parameters. And then we take care of sending that transaction. Now, the next evolution of that is to make it a little more intelligent. And what that means is we have tried to send this transaction to this account very many times. We tried on FedNow, and while their financial institution is live on the FedNow network, it is not able to deliver to that account. But every time that we tried on RTP, it is able to deliver to that account. So even if your preferred rail is FedNow, why would we keep trying to send it over FedNow if it's not working? So at that point is where the next evolution will come along, where we just say, well, based on our experience for the past transactions that we have sent, this transaction has never worked this way, so we're going to default it to the other rail, so that the system is able to learn based on the behavior what's the rail where it can deliver those transactions. So at the end of the day, the last thing that we want is for us to be jumping from one network to the other. We want to find a place where it's frictionless for us to be able to deliver those payments. So that's kind of where we want to take the API, and these are not evolutions that are going to land here in a year, right? So we have deployments that are coming in January and February to address these challenges so we can push this forward. One of the things why this is not happening immediately is because we are, as part of processing the transaction, we are making those calls to the core, and we are also making calls to the GL account so that these can be out of balance at the core level. So we want to make sure that if a transaction went through FedNow, it failed, and we have to move it now to RTP, that we are making the right entries on the GLs, because like I said, we are treating this as cash. So the first thing that we do is we get those funds out of the consumer account, and we want to make sure that the description on that is accurate, and also the entries on the GL accounts are accurate, so that whenever your operational side of the fence is looking at the reports and running reconciliation on this, it makes sense for the transactions that you have executed by calling the APIs. Let's see. Let me see if there's anything else that I have here. One of the things that I want to make sure that we talked about is that the use cases are already there, and that we are seeing on the network new use cases every single day, right? So initially, it was the account-to-account transfers from Chase. Then it expanded to Square, Venmo, PayPal. Then we started seeing MoneyLion and these early wage access companies. Now we're seeing more of earned wage access, and it just keeps expanding. We started seeing account validation in real time using micro deposits over RTP or FedNow. So the use cases are already out there. Every time that you are seeing any kind of money movement, there is a chance that that money movement is required to be done in real time. So that will help you understand what's the impact of using these APIs and why it's important for you to start looking at this and seeing if there is anything that you can move into this way where you can give a benefit to your users and also give an opportunity to the financial institution to be able to generate revenue by adopting this kind of service where you are able to charge for expediting the delivery of the payment. So that's it for today. And I have 30 seconds. So if there are any questions, I'll be around. And again, thank you for coming. This was really excellent and exciting. So thank you all for being here.
Okay.